So, dear guests, very pleased to welcome the acclaimed writer Lisa Weeda today, together with my colleague, the ambassador of Ukraine, Maxim Kononenko. Lisa Weeda hardly needs an introduction. However, just let me say this: her book Aleksandra, about her grandmother's life journey, is not only deeply personal, but also very much topical in these times. Ms. Weeda has been named the literary talent of 2022, which underscores how influential her writing has become. Welcome here in Huis Schreien. It's also a great pleasure to have Geert-Jan Haan with us today. Geert-Jan Haan was until recently the BNR News radio correspondent in Ukraine and works as a freelance journalist and Slavist. In 2007, he was the winner of the Dik Schepenzeel Aanmoedigingsprijs. That's a nice Dutch breaker. The yearly award for the most talented journalist of the Netherlands, covering issues from non-Western countries. Welcome. Lisa Weeda's debut has been published in November of 2021, only 3 months before the start of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. The book focuses on Ukraine, the motherland of her grandmother. The novel begins with Aleksandra, the author's grandmother. In 1942, she was deported from Ukraine to work in the war industry in Germany, and later her grandfather Lisa travels to her birthplace and devotes herself to researching her family tree. And she particularly follows the trace of her cousin, who was murdered during this conflict in eastern Ukraine. The book was nominated for the Libris Literary Prize and has been on the bestseller list for weeks. And I read it in Dutch, and I was deeply moved by the book, and it helped me to gain insights into the country, to Ukraine, to better understand the context. I would like to give the floor to the ambassador of Ukraine in the Netherlands, Maxim Kononenko. Is yours. Thank you. Please.
Thank you very much. My dear friend Cyril, thank you very much for organizing this event. Actually, my colleagues have written for me an excellent speech. Very political one, with clear political messages, and even about European integration and European candidacy status for Ukraine. I read this speech, it was really excellent, and after we discussed this speech with my spouse Tatiana, and she said me that you of course can deliver the speech and it would be right from political point of view, but you cannot talk about this book in this political way, very official one, because this book is about emotions. So we took our time, we discussed everything, and finally I have another speech to deliver, and I would like to begin by saying, dear Lisa and dear friends, actually back on Wednesday, February 23, Ukrainians lived the usual life of the people of the 21st century. Morning running, coffee, work, professional and family plans, family dinner. From the next day, this normalcy of life became a thing of the past. Home comfort has been replaced by bomb shelters, and planning has been replaced with survival. And life has become synonymous with danger. Could we all imagine this happening in reality? Hardly. We have seen similar apocalyptic scenes in movies, read about them in books, but it was a fictional reality. However, on February 24, this reality brutally broke into lives of every Ukrainian. Understanding of the situation came instantly and brutally. We began operating on some kind of internal autopilot. Everyone. Some were saving children from danger, some joined the army, and some were giving their 100% on diplomatic front. This first shock became synonymous with hard work. Gradually, the scale of this reality was becoming more and more obvious. During these first weeks, we were able to protect ourselves both militarily and morally. The war applied a black and white filter for reality. It simplified things. Everything became obvious. Where is good and where is the evil? Who are we and who is the enemy? Strange as it may sound, months of resistance have strengthened for our existence as a nation, as a state. We defend values where every human life matters, where freedom of speech matters, and where democracy matters. We are undoubtedly a part of European civilization. We love our language, our symbols, our flag. We are proud of our country, our heroes, and our president. We have stopped being afraid of the parties that only recently was widely criticized. Now we are all united by the common goal, the victory of freedom over tyranny. This reality prompted us to better understand the past, both distant and recent, to study more carefully the lessons of history, to understand the challenges of our generation for the sake of our children and the children of our grandchildren. Many Ukrainians in the early days of the war didn't have time to read because the question of survival arose. Today, when the reality is accepted by each of us, we slowly move from our reading the news to books with complex stories. This is a part of psychotherapy for the Ukrainian soul. Liza's book Aleksandra brings hope for all of us because it demonstrates that the seeds of new bright future can break through the horrors of fate. Liza has become a real bridge between Ukraine and the Netherlands, and I'm happy to have such a powerful cultural ambassador as Mrs. Weeda. I wish her inspiration for her future work, and I wish many more years to her grandma Aleksandra. Thank you very much.
Yes. I got the big chair. It's really big.
So I did prepare the text myself, but the cover of the tablet was a the choice of my daughter. So that's something I have to work on for these kind of occasions. A warm welcome. My name is Kees Haan. That's all I'm going to say about me, because it's all about Lisa, of course. Lisa, so I prepared something, but maybe we can just start with analyzing the speech of Mr. Kononenko.
Well, I had to almost cry a little bit, so I think that's a good start in a Ukrainian way. A lot of emotions that we kind of sometimes miss when we're in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
This cooled off way of looking at things and perceiving stories. But yeah, I think the only thing I'm thinking about lately, as I'm also just a writer, with just one, well, I wrote different things before, with one book, a virtual reality installation, also about Donbass, and a photo book about Australia. It's near Lviv in Finiki. It's where ex-homeless and ex-drug addicts have a community, and where they live and work together, and they are trying to keep off drugs and not go back on the streets again. I did a photo project there with Robin and Alicia Clemens, and right now the people of Australia, which means home, are still helping people there. Normally they help the homeless in Lviv. Also during Christmas they have special dinners. They were the first ones in the whole of Ukraine who put like clothing bins in Lviv, and they wash all the clothes and they sell it. They have their second-hand store. So I'm only a person trying to bring Ukraine a bit closer to Dutch people and readers who are not afraid to read this book, because to some Dutch readers it's quite complicated, I heard. That's the only thing I can do right now, and it's the only thing I've been wanting to do for 10 years now, so that's actually quite a long time. So maybe I'm trying to be a bridge, but it's more a ponton. It's not that big yet. Give me some time. I'm still young, and it feels like a lot of pressure, but děkuju. I'll try my best.
I thought, while the ambassador was giving his speech, I also thought about your uncle Kolya.
Yes.
One of the characters, also in your book. It's weird sometimes to talk about characters while there are or were real people. Mm-hmm. But when the ambassador was mentioning black and white, good or right, evil, I thought about Kolya, because he also kind of had to make decisions.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about Kolya and then summarize the book a little bit, or should we do it the other way around?
No, I will talk about Kolya first. For the people who do not know me, hello. I'm a quite chaotic storyteller, but we'll get there in the end, and then it will all come together and you will leave happily.
Well, the embassy also asked me to introduce you, and I also filled on that, so it's okay. I was writing already about my grandmother, my babushka Aleksandra, who is an actual person. She's 97 now. She lives in Dordrecht. And she actually in 1945 arrived here as a 20-year-old girl, and she saw the bevrijding. She was here at Bevrijdingsdag after she was deported from Ukraine in 1942 on the 18th of November, and worked in Germany in Frankfurt, then stayed in Belgium for a while, and then came to the Netherlands. That's where my research started. I was quite young. I was 23. I'm 10 years older now. And I wanted to write about the Ostarbeiter history. I loved to read about the Second World War a lot. Also as a young child, when I was 10 at school, I did like a presentation about the Holocaust while other people were talking about their hamster or guinea pigs. And I was like, that's really cool, but not important. Come on, let's talk about some real stuff. And I never heard the word Ostarbeiterin, even though I read so much about history, and there were a lot of young Soviet women that were deported from the Soviet Union to Germany. It's like around 1 million. and that's really a lot. And so I started researching that history. I will come to Kolja. And it was 2014, and I was researching this story. I went to Germany. I tried to find Ostarbeiterin pictures in the, what is it again? There's like an online picture library, Staatsarchief, and it's about 14 pictures of Ostarbeiterin girls, not more. Well, there were 1 million girls. To me, that was really compelling, so I tried to dig and dig and dig. And in 2014, in the spring, the war in Donbass started, and I have family in Luhansk. They're still there. They don't want to leave. And the family who's also not only in Luhansk, but they also have family in Odessa, in Almaty, and in Murmansk, so also in Kazakhstan and in Russia. They're falling apart more and more. But the war was starting in Donbass, and it's always hard with Ukrainian family to tell what is really wrong and what is actually happening and how terrible it actually is. It's like in case of my family, I don't know how it is with yours, you have to tone it up a little bit. So if you call your Churcha and she says, well, we're fine, they say normal na, and then they're actually doing quite shit. And it was really difficult for us as a family in the Netherlands check what it was like. And I think in March 2015, Kolja, my uncle, was kidnapped. He walked outside. His cousin Julia saw him walk to his car. 2 men got into his car. This is all Luhansk. They drove away and he disappeared for 3 months. My family has always come to the Netherlands since I was a young child, so I had all these, kind of big Russian, Kazakh, Ukrainian aunties with their golden teeth and their, flower dresses, shouting in Russian at each other. And I was too young to understand. So, but it's normally normal that they would come to our country. But in 2015 was the first time that my mother took me to Odessa, to family, and that was also the same period that Kolja was missing. And I was quite a young writer. I did some projects. I traveled to Ukraine by myself with a photographer, with Robin, I already talked about. But it was really unreal to have an uncle that you met when you were young being missing. It's a weird concept. He got into a car and his phone died, and then he was gone for 3 months. And he was found on the day I graduated with the Ostarbeiterin story about my grandmother from art school. His dead body was found outside his house, quite close to where he lived. Molested, well, not molested, gemarteld. Mutilated. And that was super weird. For a writer, that's extra weird because a lot of worlds and stories kind of come together in a very particular part of time. I did a performance that night about drinking with my family, and my mom did not tell me. She told me the next day. And it took me a long time to write about this. I was already researching the war in the Donbass. I was downloading a lot of pictures, following photographers, Twitter accounts.
Was Kolja the most difficult character / family member to write about?
Yeah, of course. It's very, I met him when I was younger, and our whole family was broken in all the way over Europe. A family kind of fell into mourning over something that you cannot understand in a way. He has to make choices also. It was also a very political death in a way, because he did not want to cooperate with the new leaders of this new Luhansk People Republic. And he did not want to give money to them. And they said, okay, then we cannot work with you. Yeah, it even makes me nauseous to talk about it. I need to think how I can talk about this, because the interesting part also in writing is normally when you write about something, it is already over. It has ended, but this is still going on. The Donbass War was, it started in 2014, it was still going on in 2022, and then it was the 24th of February, and it got worse. And sometimes it felt quite safe, this Donbass area, also to my family, I guess. They also had good days and good periods and quiet periods. Sometimes it would get heavier and then it would get normal again, life was seemingly normal. And some time ago I read an interview by Andrei Kurkov, a writer from Ukraine, who wrote a beautiful book, Great Bees, about a man. It's a crazy book, it's really funny, but it's also really Ukrainian. And it takes a lot of time in the beginning, it's really slow in the beginning. You're like, where are you going, Kurkov? Come on, take me somewhere. It's about a guy, Sergei, and he lives in the gray area in the Donbass. Between, his village is like between the separatist army and the Ukrainian army, and he has bees. He's a beekeeper, and that's the only thing he has. At some point the shooting gets too heavy and he's like, okay, I really need to go, I need to save my bees. Do I have other bee friends in Ukraine? Yes, I do. Where does this beekeeper friend live? In Crimea, which was annexed in 2014. So he travels in an old Soviet Lada with his bees in the back, all the way through Ukraine to Crimea to kind of save his bees. And during this story, you meet all the different political views of Ukraine at that moment in time. It's a really interesting and easy and smart way, I guess, to show how complex it is to choose a side, to not make it black and white, as you said. And Kurkov said about this novel, how can I write about something that is not finished yet? And I think that's the same thing I thought when I wrote about Kolya. I've never been to his grave. In the book I tried to get there, but it doesn't work out. Horrible.
Spoiler alert.
Well, yeah, so many. I think there's all plot points are given away in the beginning.
In a way. Yeah.
Yeah. Some people think the Lisa in the book dies in the end. That's also not a spoiler, nobody knows. I'll leave it up to the readers. Just figure it out yourself.
Well, sometimes it's hard to understand in the beginning what's fiction and what actually really happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it starts with you at a border crossing. But that's also something to think about, because it's Ukrainian territory, but
Yes.
because there is a war since 2014, you have to talk about the border crossing to get into the not Ukrainian part of Lugansk, which is already a crazy thing to talk about, to think about, of course. But you were not really there.
No, in the book, I will try to explain a bit more about the way it's built up, and then I'll come back to this.
Sure.
I'll try. In the book, it starts with me at the border crossing, or it's Lisa at the border crossing with a doek, a cloth with all family lines embroidered on it. And Aleksandra, my grandmother, has told me to bring the cloth over the bridge, so from Ukraine to this new republic, to bring it to Kolya's grave, because Kolya cannot find peace, he cannot find rest on this restless part of the country. Donbass has always been quite a restless part of Ukraine. When you also look at the earlier history, like the collectivization, for example. She tries to get through, Lisa, and it works out kind of, but when she's on the other side of the bridge, a soldier is running behind her and tells her to come back, and she thinks, oh, I have to go to the next checkpoint with all the people from the Lugansk Republic. Will they actually let me through? What am I doing? And then she hears a whisper from a field.
on the left. She runs into the field and there all of a sudden appears a super big palace. And it was the palace, it's a metaphor for the palace of the Soviets that was never built. It was one of the biggest building projects that Stalin ever wanted to make in the 30s. It had to be the biggest, it had to become the biggest building of the world, 416 meters high with I think 316 meters of building. It looked a bit like a horrible Stalinistic Tower of Babylon with on top 100-meter high Lenin pointing to the west, accordingly.
So Lisa was there, suddenly.
Well, she falls into it and there's Nikolaj, the father of Aleksandra, and he's waiting for Aleksandra to finally come home. In reality, in the actual life, so the book is always switching between what's history to me and what's storytelling and fiction. My great-grandfather Nikolaj put my grandmother Aleksandra on a deportation train in 1942 in November, and he said to her, "If it's better where you are deported to, please stay there." And he died before she could return home. So she never saw her father again. The last time she saw him, she was 18 years old. So I tried to kind of build a monument for Nikolaj so I could meet him through writing in like a weird, non-existent palace full of Soviet and Ukrainian history. And in the top of this big building, Kolya has locked himself up in Stalin's room, and he doesn't want to come out. But Lisa is determined to give the cloth to him. This whole plot, but I give it away within 50 pages, so it's really no problem. Yeah, that's the story. I needed to find a place to put this complex 100-year family history to kind of, in Dutch we say proppen het erin. I needed to squeeze it in, and it was quite difficult. But I never went to Lugansk, no. My aunt, my great aunt Nina, who's still living in Lugansk, who was born there, back then it was Voroshilivgrad. She invited me to come this summer. I guess that's going to be quite difficult. As I say it laughing, but I'm not laughing at all.
No, I remember we were talking in February also about you planning a visit to Odessa.
Yes.
Also didn't work out well.
No, my whole Odessa family has fled. So my uncle and my aunt are now in Ljubljana. A part of my family is now in Germany, and my Tjurtja Clara, who talks a lot and never leaves you alone, is in the Netherlands. So we're kind of managing her, moving her around in the family. Like 2 weeks of Clara for you. 2 weeks of Clara for you. She's really nice, but she knows everything better than we do, so that's quite difficult.
Aleksandra, to let people understand a little bit the family lines, Aleksandra is your grandmother.
Yes.
She's still alive. She's 97, you said?
Mm-hmm.
And then she has 2 sisters?
3.
3. 2 of them are alive? 3 of them?
3.
Everyone is alive?
As of today, yes, they are still alive.
That's incredible. And one of them is also living in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, Tjurtja.
So at the beginning of this year, with the unrest in Kazakhstan, you were thinking like, okay, what's going on? And it was actually the beginning of something bigger, worse. You're in a very complex family.
Yes, as a writer, that's amazing. But in reality, it's cruel.
Yeah. So can I ask you also, referring to the speech, but also to every one of us, because it was some kind of a watershed moment, like February the 24th. Where were you? What do you remember?
Well, the week I think starting actually on Monday that week already, I texted a lot with my family because it was already, something was boiling in DNR and LNR. We already saw that there was I think a shell, it hit the kindergarten. This picture got all over the world, it went viral.
It was a shelling of a kindergarten, and I remember all the balls laying on the ground, and there was a really ugly but cute. How heet it? I'm like doing this. Baham.
Oh, that's a good one.
Curtain?
Wallpaper.
Wallpaper.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But it was really it was a really compelling picture because on the right side there was the brick wall was broken, there was a big hole in it, and the wallpaper, thank you, was so cute and happy. It is to a writer it was a compelling picture. A lot of memes were made also at that point where I think Tolstoy or Dostoevsky were looking through the hole. And the text under it read, "When your great Russian friends are coming," or something. And a lot of my friends from Kiev and Lviv and Odessa were already sharing this meme. And I was texting my family from Odessa and from Luhansk, like, "Are you safe in Luhansk? Is everything going well?" And they were like, "Well, it's a bit dangerous, but not close to home, so it's more on the outskirts of the area." And my family from Odessa were scared. They really were afraid that something bigger was going to happen. But it also it's weird because now, in hindsight, I can say, yeah, of course we already knew. We now know that it actually happened. But for example, my uncle Andri and my tiocia Clara said he wants more, meaning Putin. And and I was asked to talk about these republics on television already. You invited me for your radio program, Perestroikast.
And you said you were already crying for a few days.
Yeah, I was really
Before the
nervous.
24th, yeah.
I was really afraid that something was going to happen, but it feels, it's weird to talk about it right now because, it's just that it would have been better if it hadn't happened. And then it was the 24th, and my phone had been ringing since 6 in the morning, but I slept and I put it on airplane mode. And then I woke up. No, something else happened before. My girlfriend woke me up in the middle of the night and she said, "I dreamt that there is a war." And I was like, yeah, it's all well, I'll go back to sleep. No. And then I woke up there and there was actually a war going on, and that was. I just worked for 3 months non-stop after that. And I have Ukrainian friends, of course, Ukrainian family members. And we were all do that. They are trying to jump the wave, and that's horrible. But it gets more depth. I really hated that it's not translated to English yet, because then I would have loved to read some parts to you. Because there is a lot about. I'm gonna look up if maybe you can.
I can sing a song. Yeah. You want me to sing a song?
In Russian, Ukrainian.
I did translate something for you.
You did.
Yeah, but it was not your book actually.
Oh,
But
great.
No, but it was on the 3rd page, I think. Where was it?
You mean the motto?
No, I mean Svetlana Alekseyevich.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she's the motto.
Because I think that I think that was very interesting as well. If that's okay with you, then
Yes, please.
we jump to that.
I think that's really important also to talk about her work.
So it's a small part of her, the speech she gave after winning the Nobel Prize in Literature. And in English it is as followed. I lived in a country where dying was taught to us from childhood. We were taught death. We were taught that human beings exist in order to give everything they have, to burn out, to sacrifice themselves. We were taught to love people with weapons. Is it actually the part you wrote?
No,
But it was also an interesting part. Yeah.
This is also an interesting part.
I read your that part, and I was looking at the speech in English, and then I think I added something else.
Yeah, I think.
It's okay.
Yeah, and do you know? Does everybody know Svetlana Alekseyevich? Great.
Brilliant Belarusian investigative journalist writer.
Yeah, and the thing, I will try to translate freely from what is in the motto of my novel. She says, I want to say that we missed our chance in the 90s by choosing between a strong country and a country of dignity where life is good. We chose for a strong country or a country of force. It is, again, the time of force. Russians are fighting against Ukrainians, against their brothers. Well, right now I think this sentence you will also throw it in the bin. My father was Belarus, my mom is Ukrainian, so it is with many. This is also the case with my family. We are now scattered over so many different countries that it gets, in this case, since February, harder and harder to come back to each other again. We're kind of drifting apart by political views, by propaganda, by wanting to talk about politics or not wanting to talk about politics, or just obey politics or try to not even think about politics. She says the time of hope is replaced by a time of fear. Well, yeah, not even fear. I think vrees is even more nuanced. And she says time goes backwards and it's getting more complicated and complicated to not think about that last sentence. We see so many repetitive stuff right now. In the novel, there's also a big part on the collectivization. My family, who were farmers, they had to give their farms in the 1930s to the state, and everything was taken from them. They had to move from their home in a little village to the city, where the parents of my grandmother, Aleksandra, looked for a new job. And a lot of grain was exported away from this area, from the black soil that was so fertile. And it was taken away not only to be exported to make money, but it's also an easy way to make people more obedient. And right now, I think Timothy Snyder, a writer who wrote great books and did great research who knows a lot about Ukraine and wrote a book, Bloodlands. I think the subtitle is Europe between Stalin and Hitler, or the other way around. Yeah. He tweeted, I think 2 days ago, about Russia now again having power over where the grain goes, where they make it now impossible to export it. I heard that today they are trying to get through Poland and Odessa in a way, so I hope it works. But there are so many repetitions of, it's horrible. If you know so much about the history, you really see times going backwards, as Alexievich said. And maybe it's also good to know that Alexievich is a dissident writer. I spoke to another writer, Sasha Filipenko, who's also not living in Belarus anymore, that both he and Alexievich there was written about them in a state paper that they were supposed to be hanged in a central square in Belarus. So, writing is a dangerous job. I'm going chaotic, but my mind is there are so many things that now when I will write about this in 3 years, there are so many connections to be made. But it's also so interesting that a lot of writers, like Sasha Filipenko, like Svetlana Alexievich, always pointed at this. It's not new. It has been happening for such a long time. And if you look at the Donbass, and that's something this is my first actual novel. I'm really young. I'm not an expert. I'm really trying. I'm learning. There's so much to learn. It's such a complicated area. But you can see that there's this repetitive, shit going on. And I've just been reading this. The Chechen Labyrinth. On the Nivels, please buy it and read it because it's the same. It's actually the same.
here in the first part of the book.
Can you repeat it one more time and also show it to the people at home? All the 3 of them who are watching.
Hello, my dear friends. Hi, Mom. Thanks for watching. The Chechen labyrinth. It's really well. I guess you need to have some stomach, but it's really interesting. We all know about the Chechen War, and in the beginning of this book, Russian soldiers enter a house, and let's see. I think on the second or the third page, the writer is already talking about Russians that are not supposed to be seen as Russians. So the same separatist story that we also saw in Donbass, that we also saw in South Ossetia, that we also saw in Abkhazia. It's crazy. These are all my fascinations of the past 3 months. So give me some time. There's so much going on at the same time, and I think Donbass is only a tiny part of this. And then with Aleksandra, I try to show the Dutch reader that this is not new. And right now, when you read it, the book, as you say, gets more history kind of slipped into it, and the current invasion of Russia and Ukraine is also now bleeding or dripping into the book. Some scenes you cannot unread the current situation anymore. So that's quite not interesting, but complicated.
Intriguing, everything. Yeah. Do we have time for one more thing to address before? Yeah.
They're all so quiet.
Before they're all interested now in the other book you were showing.
Yeah,
so.
quiet. I really don't care. Just read Alexei's book of Read It All.
Now, there's one more thing I want to talk with you about. I think actually you gave an interview to the Volkskrant in May, I think.
Yes, yeah.
Maybe the same week as the ambassador did when you addressed the lack of interest in German language in the Netherlands. Was it 16th of May, I think? And
this was a week before.
You addressed another lack of interest, namely our generation. I was born in 86, you were from 89. Not having interest in, not particularly war, but political engagement.
Yeah.
Talk about serious stuff. So we sometimes text about serious stuff, while there are a lot of our friends who are just texting about shit.
Yes.
So what's this about? I mean, you were born just before the fall of the Berlin Wall. I was born 4 days after Chernobyl disaster. What's up with our generation? Why don't we talk about serious things?
Well, I think there's another bridge, and that's actually the bridge between, to make it a circle, between Ukraine and the Netherlands, is that a lot of my friends and acquaintances from, for example, Kiev. I've traveled to Kiev several times, and I always meet up with the same people. They're, of course, artists, because I'm also in a bubble. For the photographers, people who work for the radio, writers, and in 2019, some of these friends and acquaintances, they came to the Netherlands, and we had an afternoon together in one of my favorite places in Utrecht. It's the Utrechtse Boekenbar, where you can buy books, obviously, but also drink. So that's a great combination for our generation. It's really hip. And we talked about politics for a very, very long time. I think 2 hours. That's quite long, even for Dutch measures. Or most of my friends don't talk about politics that long.
It's more Dutch to drink beer with your bike in the cafe than to drink beer with books in the cafe.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Where do you live?
No, we have a lot of those cycling bars.
Echt waar?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's hip, it's trendy. Yeah.
Echt? Oh,
Yeah, we live in the bubble, I know.
With a bike? Okay, I'll go.
I'll take you.
Please take me there. And at some point, and it was something that I was thinking about a lot because I traveled a lot to Ukraine before, and always when I met people
we talked about politics, about what was going on, especially I think since Maidan Revolution of 2014, these people were really looking at their country in a critical way, and thinking about it, talking about it, discussing it again, discussing it all over again, fighting. That's also something that Dutch people do not do mostly in a bar. We're kind of mere like, we call it throw some sand over it and we're fine, you know. We don't really like to have complex, friction or complex conversations. Well, me and some of my friends do, but otherwise I will ditch you as a friend, I guess. But some of these friends from Kiev, they said to me in that buka bar that to them, my part of Europe, because now we can distinctly see that there are different parts of Europe. I think it's never been more evident than the last 3 months that we are such a complicated part of the world with so many different views and different, maybe gradations of safety and privilege. They called Europe bored Europe, and I thought about that for a very, very long time. And it stuck with me because I think that it's easy to live in a place where it's so chill, to not experience any kind of friction or any kind of pain or any kind of difficulty, or have an actual difficult conversation with somebody, for example, about identity. In Netherlands we can talk about the toeslagenaffaire, but if it doesn't touch me, well, it touched a lot of people in the Netherlands, and a lot of people are still sifting through a lot of paperwork and still not getting their money from the government. But I never talk about it.
For me, it was the first time that people from our generation were talking about taking people into houses. So when all the Ukrainian people fled their country and came to the Netherlands, Poland, Germany, Netherlands, was the first time that my friends were telling me or texting about, okay, are you taking people in? Do you have a room available? That was something striking as well for me.
You really can see that there's an actual distance. There's distance in what way you want to help. And in this case, Ukraine is close, and I'm really happy that people want to help. But it's also But it's also a paradox in a way. There's one final thing I want to talk about, because this is a really different story, but I think it's in the same realm, and I think it's in the same universe of thinking about the way we can take position and think and talk about these situations and try to be a bit more engaged. I made a virtual reality piece about a town called Rosipne. It's in the Donbass. The war in the Donbass started in the spring of 2014, and as we all know, we're in the Netherlands. In July 2014, the MH17 plane crashed. Well, it didn't crash, it was shot out of the sky by a book. And to me, it was war since that spring. There was already a very, very big war crisis going on, and I was at a party in Amsterdam. I think it could have been, if we would take it to the future, it could have possibly been in a bar with bicycles and beer, like super hipster party. And I talked to a girl because my family was visiting the Netherlands at the same time, my family from Ukraine, and I told her about my family visiting. And the only thing she asked me was, but do they feel guilty about the downing of the MH17? I really did not understand what happened in her brain. It's really complicated, or not complicated, maybe nothing is complicated. It was really black and white. But it also means that you're really not interested in anything unless it's really, really close. I talked to and this is the final thing I want to say. I talked to a woman from the Red Cross about this, and in Dutch they have a
formula. It's de wet van pleuris.
I cannot translate.
Please translate the word pleuris for me. It's like the law of a complete shit show.
That's a good one.
In a way.
Yeah.
And it's based on, I think, 3 elements.
I would say scheisse, if I'm allowed to do that in that house. But
It's a nice word, yeah.
okay.
And this law, it has, I think, this formula has 3 elements. And it's if it's photogenic, the crisis, if it's close, and how many people are dead. And in case of MH17, it was all 3. It was one of the most, well, to me, as we also, of course, 9/11, etc. There are certain events that are so photogenic that they will never leave our brain again. And that makes it already closer to us. In the case of the Netherlands, this plane was filled with Dutch people. So there's no conclusion yet, but I think this all comes together in a way, and if you would put it as a writer next to each other in, for example, a theater play or in a documentary, you can say something about our generation and the way we look at things, and the way we also, and I think that's something that also became clear, that we really feel very Western here in the Netherlands, and we feel untouchable, and I think that's really a really dangerous place to be in, because it's not. And we should think about that more and try to maybe reach out a bit more. So, okay.
That was the final thing.
Yes.
There's so much more to talk about. I had many questions prepared. We had many questions. We had many discussions before, but I think that the starting point was the second speech from Mr. Kononenko, the second best speech, and it was a great starting point. I think there was room for questions, and so I can give my microphone to
Tessa?
a great assistant.
Was het Tessa of niet?
Yes.
Oh ja, oké.
Here.
Oké, spannend. You can ask
No
anything.
questions.
If there are no questions, it's also fine. Yeah? Okay. Spannend.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to ask you, your grandmother and your mother, who are Ukrainians, was it important for them to pass on this element of being Ukrainian? So were you born in a path of being Ukrainian, or is it something which at a later stage came to you for other reasons which you worked out, perhaps you rediscovered?
I think, well, through eating and being with family, because they visited the Netherlands a lot when I was a child, it was quite normal to have them around. So when something's normal, you don't see it as much. But when I started to research my grandmother's history, I think it's, 10 years ago, and I started interviewing her and traveling more to Ukraine, it became a bigger part of me. I think this is not an identity novel. It's not like, for example, Jonathan Safran-Foer, who wrote one beautiful book, I forgot the title, Everything is Illuminated, yeah, thank you, about Ukraine. But it has grown on me, and I'm still very Dutch. You can't lose that, but I think there are some things are different. I don't really like planning ahead with friends. There has to be a bit more spontaneity. I think there's always food for more people. You're always welcome. I think that's the biggest Ukrainian part, and I think also the emotional part is different. I think Dutch people, as I said, we don't really like friction, or emotions are a bit different. I'm also looking to my left too. There's a bit more anger in us. Like, come on, a bit more emotion.
Because if I can add, Lisa, a quarter of you is Ukrainian, Cossack, and Russian, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our family was, as Aleksandra also wrote, it's a mixture. It's Don Cossack, Ukrainian, Russian.
And I really also fell in love with the Don Cossack part. So there's a lot of history of the Don Cossacks, and Nikolaj, the grandfather, the great grandfather, turns into a deer sometimes, a white deer. And the white deer with a golden arrow in his butt.
But he Ukrainian also.
Yeah, they are Ukrainian also, and they're also partly Don Cossack, and they kind of fought for a way of living freely, and they did not, for example, want to be part of the Soviet Union. Also, they resisted, and in the story, these Don Cossack deers, they guard the Donbass country, and they guard the family, and they know about the history of the Donbass, and they know about the history of Ukraine. This was a really interesting element, because this fight for freedom, it's really this fight for being a sovereign country and a sovereign people. That was really the part that struck me most. But it feels weird to kind of own like I'm Ukrainian.
No, but
It's not. I try sometimes. When I'm angry, I do. Mostly not.
Lisa, give me the mic. Give me the mic. Now, in the case of your smartphone, I think that's the word in English, right? Case. I suddenly think about it because I saw it last Friday. There's a new element of Ukraine, and there's Saint Javelin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can we somehow connect this to Saint Javelin?
Okay, you maybe explain Saint Javelin to people.
No, you can.
I'm still, but okay, a javelin is like this rocket launcher, right?
From your shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah, you put it on your shoulder and you launch rockets. Still weird to talk about weapons, but okay. And there's an artist who raises a lot of money, and he created an icon, like a classical icon of Maria. Who is it? A saint, a woman saint who holds this javelin in her arms like a baby Jesus. A little bit. It's actually it's a bit perverse. But this artist makes stickers and T-shirts of it, and Zelensky even got a Saint Javelin T-shirt a while ago. And all the money that people pay for all this kind of merch goes to Ukraine. But it's also really become a new symbol. And maybe it's a bit like the Don Cossack deer to me. I think it's also been painted on a wall in Kiev. Is that true? Yeah. So it's an amazing symbol. Please buy T-shirts by Saint Javelin, but you don't have to wear it to work or something. Maybe also as underwear. So stickers are $10, I think. So there are many symbols that are. It's growing and growing, of course, and now it's getting also viral, and that's really interesting. Internet is an interesting source also in these times. Any more questions, or do you all just want to drink wine? That's also okay.
Thank you very much for the interesting discussion. It was very interesting to follow. I have a question on your family. You mentioned your family is spread across several countries, and that's especially in current times. It makes it more difficult for you to feel closer. Could you tell us more about that?
And then, do you mean specifically like the family in Russia and Kazakhstan and?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, we talked about that last week. We had a coffee in a place where there were no bikes, but just an old man with a mustache and a lot of weird antiques, and there was nobody else. It's a weird coffee place.
That's cool.
But it was also cool. My mother has her birthday on the 26th of February. And as our family does, they always call you at 6 in the morning because there's a time difference, but they forget. They do every year. My mom was called by Julia from Murmansk. It's all the way up north in Russia. And Julia said, Genia, happy birthday to you, Marie. My mom's called Marie. How are you doing? And my mom said, well, not so good. The Russian invasion started in Ukraine since 2 days. And the only thing Julia said was, we don't talk politics. And then my mom said, well, thank you, then I'll just hang up and we'll call next year. Lida, Chucha Lida, who lives in Almaty, has a daughter called Ira, and Chucha Krawa, the one talking so much, she arrived in the Netherlands. And normally when these three sisters visit the Netherlands, they go together, they never go by themselves. And it's also because they cannot speak any other language, and my mom has to pick them up at Schiphol Airport behind douane, because they never find the exit, because they don't understand the signing. It's hilarious. Mostly they go all three when they visit Aleksandra, as a surprise mostly. And now learned that Krava was in the Netherlands, so she called. I think Clara arrived half March, something like that, maybe the beginning of April. And she called like, why did you not call me? Why am I not going to the Netherlands? Did you go by yourself? What's going on? Hello, you should have called me, we should have come together. And then Clara answered, she's from Odessa. Well, I'm not here for leisure, actually. This is because of the war and I had to flee the country. And Lida, who has no internet, is illiterate. Also, she was a real farmer girl as a young girl. She has a lot of blue eyeshadow and always wears sponsor print. Great. And she's really nice and funny. But she doesn't read, so she didn't know about the war. She lives by herself. And she was really shocked because she didn't believe it. And then Chucha Krawa said to her, well, ask Ira, and Ira explained everything from the actual point of view, so I'm happy. They know that there's a war going on and what's actually happening. Before Chucha Krawa fled Odessa, she was sitting in her bathroom in her Khrushchev flat. Horrible, weird apartments, quite cute, all built in Khrushchev times, but they're like copies of copies of copies. So when you are in different cities, you can walk into a Khrushchev apartment and it looks like it's a Narnia closet of apartments. It's really interesting. They are built the same way. A lot of people live there and still live there. Sorry, I'm going like this. And Clara was hiding in her bathroom because it was the furthest away from the windows and there was an air alarm in the city. And she called Nina, or Nina called her sister who's from Lugansk. And Nina and the family that's still living in Lugansk right now, they are pro-Russian since 2015. So with them, it's really complicated to talk about politics. Or we just don't, because people start fighting. And then they go away again. When they meet, for example, in Odessa, they fight and then Nina leaves and goes back to Lugansk. And Nina asked Clara, how are you doing? She said, well, I'm hiding at the moment together with my cat in the bathroom. It's not that comfortable. I think she made a bed also there. And Nina said, well, you can just come to Lugansk. It's safe here. Which is not true. So yeah, it's really complicated to live in this family right now. The family is really falling apart, I think, by the week, more and more. And I would really, as a writer, but also as a family member, want to travel, visit all these people in a few years and talk about this with them, because I think story-wise, it's super interesting, but it will also give some insight at how complicated it is. There are so many differences and different narratives and different state channels and different media and different television and different stories that people tell each other and themselves. So it's really complicated and also interesting at the same time. No.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. I can't control my curiosity. It's a very simple question. What does Aleksandra, what does your grandmother make of all of this? What are her views? She's the inspiration.
Do you mean of the current situation?
Her family, the current situation. Her book, how was she?
Yeah, she was I think she was really happy with the book in the end. In the beginning, she was really angry. So I started interviewing her 10 years ago. She said, "Why should I talk about this? It's so long ago." And because I had to go back to a place that she left as a very young girl, and it's hard to, as she also says in the book, you cannot say goodbye forever. It's really a different part of her, but it's hard to, I think, to her mostly, because for us it's also hard, but for her, as being like the matriarch of the family, she is the oldest daughter also, so also the oldest sister. It's hard to lose people when you cannot visit their grave. And in the novel, at some point, she also says, "Why should I go back to Ukraine again? Because every time I go, I need to visit more graves." Because so much time goes by. It took her from 1942, it took her 31 years to come back again for the first time, because it was quite dangerous to return. And it was difficult also financially, of course. So that's already a very big time. She had lived in the Netherlands a longer period of time than in Ukraine, Soviet Union. So because in the book, not only Kolja dies, but also Igor dies. He's getting blackmailed in a way by his ex-wife. And around the summer of 2014, he was found hung with a belt around his neck on the door of his bathroom, and he was buried very fast. And the police record kind of disappeared. It was a really weird story, but that was, I think, my mom and her sisters also know this boy. To them, it was a boy, it was their cousin. They met when they were young. It was very close. It's well, I want to say like losing family, because you're far away but close at the same time. I think when Igor died, and then a year later, Kolja was murdered. These were heavy blows for my grandmother. Also because you mourn in different ways when you are this far apart from each other. And at the moment in time that, for example, her sisters came to the Netherlands again, I think it was 2018, then they got to mourn Kolja together, but it takes 3 years. And I think I talked to her for 10 years about this topic, and the country changed so much, and history kind of went like on full speed or double speed even. At some point she said, "I wish I've gone back more, or with you, because I've never visited her country together with her. That's weird. The first time I went was with my mom, and the first time Aleksandra went back was with her mother. So it's also like a traditional thing almost. I would love to take my kids one day when they have the right age. But now, I think when the war started in February, she was really afraid that it would become a European war. That was the first thing she said. And the second thing is that we, as a family here in the Netherlands, we're also very lucky, of course, so that also feels horrible. She finds it really hard to talk to her sisters, for example, to Nina, because there's almost nothing to say anymore. How can you talk to your sister if they have been in such a weird and complex situation for so many years? While my grandmother is free and privileged, and she finds that very hard to still have a normal conversation with her sister, also because she knows that her sister will lie to her and tell her I'm fine, and she knows you're not fine. And she's also 97. She just wants to chill out and watch Deutsche Schlager, which she does. She loves it. She always watches these horrible Deutsche Schlager ski videos in December. With men with these still like old school Oliver Kahn
mustaches. So yeah, it's complicated. Yeah, she has taste. She does. And yeah, so I'm not talking about it that much anymore. She's old. We need to give her some free time, I guess. So I'm happy the book was finished before this, because then she would, she in Dutch we would say, ze ziet me weer aankomen. There she comes again. We need to talk more. Yeah, so.
Everyone is talking about the follow-up.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me if I want to do a prologue or something else or an extra chapter, but I'm not going to do this because this book is especially about Donbass. And it ends in 2018. It's in the space of 2018, and it's something that also people should have read before this. It's something it was always meant to be about Ukraine and to teach people about Ukraine, and I think that's its purpose. And I'm never gonna write like a tear-jerking, horrible hype book. I'm not gonna do that. That would be like horror, schmutzig. Please. Yeah, so I think that's a good answer, right?
In your point of view, is it concept of freedom depend of our own identity?
Well, can I come back to you next week? Shall I repeat it? Is the concept of freedom based on identity?
Yes, not based, depend. Because maybe for Dutch people, freedom is such thing, and for Ukrainian, it's another way of thinking and another thing, because free perception, because freedom is universal word.
Yeah.
But what does it mean?
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna maybe answer it.
You present different identity, as I understand, and you can.
I have multiple identities. Yeah, of course. Wow, this is a good question. I think the first thing I think about is that a lot of Dutch people told me that they would never fight for their national identity the way the Ukrainian people are fighting for it now. I think that's maybe the best comparison. And I asked myself the same question the other way around. Would Dutch people of my generation do so? The problem is that Ukrainian people have to fight for this sovereign identity and tell other countries and other people who still sometimes even to me talk about this brotherhood that's lost. And that was maybe never there, just a myth or a story to make it look like a brotherhood. Which also when you read this book you will know, no, it's not a brotherhood. It hasn't been a brotherhood for a very long time, let's be real. So I think that's also what I meant by broad Europe. Sometimes you forget that you're free. And so maybe that's my answer. And I have both identities, and I'm lucky to live here freely. But it's a really horrible thing to think about. A lot of people say that if Ukraine stops fighting, there will be no more Ukraine. That's the thing I think about most. That we can look at it from a free place or a free space, maybe. Is that? Yeah? We'll talk about it later when we drink something, okay? Is this it?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
So, Lisa, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And very much to you also. And well, you have built a bridge to the next step, which is a glass of wine indeed. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.